All right, so I'll just start. Are you hearing me nice? Okay. So men should be allowed to veto abortions if they contractually agree to taking full responsibility for the child. For me, I just like to clearly state that this is not an actual abortion debate whether or not abortion is good, but good or bad. But still, there are some arguments which I'll be bringing in a way that would reflect that abortion is in a sense like could be bad in some cases, and then but it's not fundamentally just a debate about whether abortion is good or bad to me. So yeah. So I think there are three main stakeholders in this debate in terms of seeing the abortion. It would be the child, it would be the mother, and it would be the man, whoever is actually willing to take the responsibility. So for me to majorly define the idea for this debate is because let's just see why abortion happens today. So abortion is happening because women do not want to compromise their future for a baby. Abortion is happening because they think that it will be a hindrance to their education, to their job. They'll not be earning enough to actually take care of the baby. So the financial responsibility and the impossibility to negotiate the future, those are the two main reasons why women are actually aborting their baby today, which means that they do not have a reason out of the financial responsibility to actually abort this baby. The sole reason for them doing this is because they don't want to, yeah, they didn't want to like destroy their future because they would have to look after the baby. They might not be able to get education and everything. But then this problem is actually going to be saved if in case we're giving if in case they're with someone who is willing to take the full responsibility of the child. I do agree that there are cases like rapes which I keep out of this because I think on that part it's not just about the financial responsibility of the baby. I think the whole idea of the guilt comes in, and then the baby would not be taken care of, or maybe you know given proper care by the mother for the entire life. So for that case, I do agree that that's I think that's a different case. But this one right here is because as I said, abortions are happening because actually women are not being able to negotiate the future, not actually um willing to take the financial responsibility, or maybe just grow up the child. But then we have the solution to that, which is the topic for this debate. If in case men can do that, we're actually solving that problem. We are not risking the maternal health, which is actually happening because so many women are doing abortions because they are scared to not deal with the life, not play with their future, and then we are actually saving babies too. So let's just see all three people at stake here. As I said, the child, the baby, and the man itself. I think all are benefited if in case we actually allow this to be done.
All right, great. So I understand that your premise is essentially that the various stakeholders need to be considered in regards to this particular topic: the child, or slash fetus, the other parent, which would be the father, the sperm donor, and the mother, who would be carrying the child to term. And then you also make some mention of the reasons behind abortion. I find this argument very interesting, but ultimately unconvincing, and I'll explain why. At its core, the debate on abortion is basically between bodily autonomy and the rights of a child or fetus. Now, that's not the core of this particular debate, but it's very important to bring that up because to disprove the argument that men should be allowed to veto abortions if they contractually agree to taking full responsibility for the child, I must simply demonstrate 2 points. The first point is that men have no right to a woman's body without her consent, regardless of the circumstances surrounding parentage. And B, that abortion is fundamentally about bodily autonomy rather than about when life begins, a fetus's right to life, what the Bible says on the matter, or whether or not the fetus is a future Hitler. And none of that, as long as I can demonstrate that abortion is fundamentally about bodily autonomy rather than about any of the rest, those two anchor points should be sufficient to disprove the claim that men should be allowed. So the first argument seems fairly simple. I doubt I'll encounter disagreement on that account, so I'll actually just let that one slide. I'll actually not even address that point until I hear your rebuttals to that point. The second is less straightforward, but the premises are equally simple. Bodily autonomy is important to every culture and governmental system. Bodily autonomy is a de facto right in most circumstances. In the areas where it is not, there is a strident pushback in favor of granting bodily autonomy. Bodily autonomy is so fundamental, it is ingrained in our treatment of the dead. After your death, regardless of how many lives it might save, how your corpse is treated is entirely dependent on your last wishes and the ability for your estate to pay for those last wishes. In fact, you can even shoot someone in both of their kidneys. And even if you are a match as a donor, the state cannot compel you to donate one of your kidneys to save the life of the person you murdered. Why then should the state be permitted to compel a woman to risk her life to bring to term a fetus which has no guarantee of being viable by forcing her to donate her womb for 9 months? A corpse and a murderer both have more rights.
Okay, that's very interesting. That's very interesting. I'll definitely reply to those things. But okay, just commonly, I think when you talk about bodily autonomy, I know that's a good point. But the problem here is addressing why those abortions are happening. If in case it was, let's just say, if in case maybe the cause of abortion was like, oh, look, I don't want to do that, I don't want to hurt my body or anything, like, that would have been a thing. But the cause, if you see, women are actually aborting babies because, as I said, it is impossible for them to negotiate the future, or they are scared of the financial responsibility, so they are also not willingly actually abort the baby. It's because of the financial constraints. It's because of the impossibility that their future might be destroyed. So these are the reasons behind actually aborting a baby. So if, as I said, if in case it was about, oh, my body hurts or anything, that would be a different thing. But the entire case is laid up on the fundamental fact that the world, like, maybe this baby would change their lives because they'll not be getting education, they'll not be getting enough money to take care of that baby, and then how expensive it gets to have a baby itself. So in a study released by the Gottmacher Institute in 2005, women were actually asked to provide reasons why they choose to have abortion, and I think 78% actually answered that it was the inability to afford, and 74 of them also got told about how they don't want to negotiate the future. So you know um so in this whole case, I think when you talk about that bodily autonomy, I think that bodily autonomy is still, like, I think that part doesn't come here, because I think it's more about how women are taking abortion. It's because they are not being able to counter all those factors in their life. And then this debate, as I said, the argument is actually going to give the solution to them, which will be ensuring their maternal health, because how many women are actually have died every year because of abortion. And I think, and there are other complications too in their further life. So I think if it's, even though abortion, no matter at what cost, it will have some minor consequences or complications in women's lives. So if in case we do this, we are actually benefiting so many lives itself. And secondly, I think when you say men have no rights on their body, so for me, this is both the idea of autonomy does not necessarily come so much into play, because I think I've addressed the causes of it. So which is actually coming together for me. I think in terms of having no right on their body, we're yeah, as I said, for me the causes matters a lot, and I think that overpowers this statement too. But I think if in case they have a good relationship, men should have a say on abortion too. That's what.
So, whatever agreements happen between the couples aside, right, and however healthy their relationship is that would permit for such an agreement is fine. But ultimately, I don't think we can remove bodily autonomy for a number of reasons. One of the most important reasons we cannot simply remove bodily autonomy from the debate is because it's sort of a legal requirement. And second of all, it's also the foundation for the rights of why the fetus would even be allowed to have its right to life considered, and also why the father would be able to have any claim on the woman's body to enforce the usage of her body to bring that fetus to term. And also, when we talk about the intention, I like that you bring that up because intention is fundamental to morality. It's not fundamental to legal requirements, but it is very fundamental to morality. And I think you gloss over a little bit of something when you speak about these stats. What you're not taking into account is the stage of life or the stage at which of development at which these women are choosing to go ahead and abort. In order for you to go ahead and claim that the intention is not to go ahead and put the fetus's concerns, you have to also then make the claim that the fetus is alive or deserving of rights at whatever stage that those stats tend to clump together. And those stats tend to clump together in the first 3 months, right? So that actually completely negates the point that there are reasons why. The reasons why are because of whatever reasons they discuss with their doctor, the fact that it has to deal with their body, the fact that their life is being put at risk, that it's a very real risk to go ahead and carry a child to term. And that fact alone should allow the woman to be able to be the primary source of information regarding what happens with her life, since she's the one that's putting her life at risk. Nobody else is under that same amount of duress. Nobody else has to go ahead and say, well, this, that, and the other, and my life is going to be risked in the gambit as well. The fact of the matter is that the woman's intention is compounded not only by the quality of life that she's going to have, but also the quality of life she's going to be able to provide, as well as the quality of life she's able to have health-wise, because she's putting her body at risk. And none of that touches the fact that with their intention, you're not talking necessarily about something which has a right to live.
I think when you talk about the bodily function, whether like terminating the baby or anything, I think, talking about the complications you'd be facing carrying a baby, if in case we compare abortion and pregnancy, like conception, like, abortion is unnatural, and pregnancy or conception, like, it's natural. So if you see the complications, or let's just say the pain you're talking about is actually, or yeah, the consequences is actually on higher level for the abortion, not the pregnancy. So when you are talking about how, as I said, the complications or the consequences of her carrying a 9-month baby, I think that there's, comparing it to abortion, complications. So that's why we're not trying to risk the women's health. But I have a small point in this. So when I thought of men, I think I didn't necessarily think of the father, but you brought the idea of father. But so let's just see, I think, how does that actually benefit the societies? I mean, I don't know if in case it's a cultural thing, but when men will be allowed to do those things, I think there have been problems today in this. I don't know if you think it's a silly point, but there's a problem that men are actually not taking care of the child. Like, it's in our culture that women actually go outside and then, men actually go outside and then make money, and then women are more not, domesticized, or let's just say not so much, but still it's seen that women are actually sharing that more time with a child. And I think this is actually a greater chance, like, to enhance that kind of thing, because I think it allows both women to actually go out and then do things whatever they want and achieve. I think that would be an ideal example to, and I think that's what we have been fighting for all our life. If you see, right, women rights, and then we want to work, we want to be business women or whatever. So I think that's the race we all are heading to. So I think it is one of the biggest example that that could actually lead even in this case. And I think that would and even like, biologically or maybe psychologically, it has been thought that men, I think, do not necessarily have so much, potential of reciprocating a child. But I think this would be a perfect, way to actually, encourage those kind of things too. So I think for me, let's just count the benefits for as I said, the 3 stakeholders. I think that all of these people are actually going to be benefited if in case we do this. So abortion, as I said, even though it's about what's happening with your body, the main idea is that why is it causing your decision? So why are you deciding to abort, right? So if in case your decision was oh, my body hurts, like I don't want to do it, that's a different thing. But as I said, 70% of the women, they believe that it's because they don't want to risk their future, they don't want to leave their jobs and then look for the child. So if in case we are allowing men to do that, it's actually creating a better society for both.
So I guess the main thread of this that I would have to rebut this latest section is that society has never benefited when you restrict bodily autonomy, especially when you specifically restrict bodily autonomy for one specific group. And that's really what the issue is here. Again, we're talking about corpses and murderers have the rights to their own body, and we're not going to go ahead and grant women that same sort of latitude. We're going to create this special circumstance under these unique circumstances. It's not as if we can go ahead and say, sure, and we're going to transplant the fetus, the developing fetus, which is not necessarily a person, into the father. The father is not going to have to take the risk of the pregnancy. The father is not going to have to take the time and the drain and the emotional expenditure to bring the fetus to term. He's not going to have to do any of those things. It's physically impossible at this stage. If that changes in the future, sure, it can be revisited. But at this point in time, in the world, right, that's simply not viable. And what I was trying to bring about before, when we're talking about the reason why that bodily autonomy is A, fundamental to this, and B, the premise that the intention is important, is until you first establish when that life begins. And life, as viewed by science, is a continuum. So there is no beginning of life. The beginning of life is when life first began on this planet. Whether you believe in abiogenesis or some kind of creator, it doesn't matter. The big life itself is considered in science as a continuum. So when you consider that fact, when you go ahead and state that we have to be concerned for this fetus at whatever stage of development it is, you can go further back in time and you can go ahead and start locking up women for their periods, right? Because that's still another stage of development. Having an egg implanted to the uterine wall is a stage of development, just as a fetus forming various appendages is a stage of development. And if you're not going to be very precise at where that line begins, I don't see how you can then justify claiming it as an anchor point for the intention that women are going ahead and putting their own well-being essentially ahead of this developing series of cells. It's just a bridge too far. You have to first be able to hold the line on where life begins.
Okay, from this point, I can see that we both want better life for women, better well-being and health of women. So that's what I'm exactly arguing for, right? So that's what I'm saying. Let's just see, when you talk about the risk of pregnancy, I don't really understand what are the risks of pregnancy, because I think, as I said, pregnancy is natural. If you see the bodily function, it goes naturally, but abortion is unnatural. And abortion has a lot of, like, yeah, it could be sometimes maybe use of like certain surgical instruments or anything, so it's actually more risky. And then if you see, it even complicates for the women to experience motherhood in the second place. It complicates her entire body because it's unnatural, as I said. So there's the risk of pregnancy, no, the risk of abortion. So and I think secondly, just talking about the causes, let's just see what we are doing by not allowing this agreement to happen. Many women, no matter like how many women would want to experience motherhood, which is actually one of the major emotions of, I think, a woman, like, throughout her entire life. So let's just see it in a different perspective. So we are not, so many women are not being allowed to experience motherhood because they do not have that financial benefit, that they could, financial, like, incentive they could use to maybe give their babies a good education or anything. They do not want to, let's just see, they want to have a baby, but then they know that like just their parents, like, not want them to have baby and then take care of the baby, instead go ahead and then educate themselves and everything. So you see there's so many women who are actually doing this out of burden, out of the idea that they cannot actually yeah, financially take the responsibility of the child or anything. So by taking this contract, we're actually allowing so many women to experience motherhood, like, and then, yeah, so, I think experience motherhood too, even though the person would be taking the responsibility, like, of the child, but still, like, even she would have association with that. So I think, in a way, we are going, letting those women experience motherhood too, despite of the circumstances, they'll be never facing. That'll be a cool thing. I mean, because if you see the problems they have, the reasons they're not doing it will not exist, because the men will be taking care of the child, they'll educate themselves. And this is a very clear distinction on this. So on your side, I would definitely want to see how abortion creates how, let's just say, not being allowed to veto abortion is actually creating a healthy life, or let's just say a better life than my side of the debate. So if in case you actually can prove that, then that'll be on your side. But I don't see that proof yet about how actually it does benefit the life better than my.
So, first of all, there's no way that restricting bodily autonomy will actually improve the lives of women, because they're already having their bodily autonomy restricted abhorrently and in an imbalanced way. So that's the first point, is that taking a step backwards, ostensibly for a step forward, is not a solution, especially when there are already legal measures in place to hold fathers responsible for the children that they bring into the world. I mean, that's simply a matter of going to a courthouse, filling out some paperwork, and saying, "Hey, you are responsible for this child. Take part in your responsibilities, or the government is going to garnish your wages." Now, there are certain instances where somebody is able to go ahead and evade these areas, or evade these legal requirements, but we're not talking about the exceptions to the rule. What we are talking about is the rule. And so, when we're looking at solutions for improving lives, right? We shouldn't start off by restricting people's rights unfairly and in an imbalanced way. There should be equal protection of the law. If there's not equal protection of the law, if certain other people are basically being granted special privileges, as the men would be in these situations, where we would not only be increasing the power of the men to enforce their desires on women's bodies, but also further restricting women's bodies by giving men an anchor to go ahead and say, "Hey, look, I'm willing to." So take, for example, all of the rich white men who have six-figure bank accounts that would then be able to go to any single mothers that they may have been dating at that time, and then go ahead and financially obligate them to carry a child onto term. Imagine if that is an abusive partner. Okay, so now you're going ahead and exposing women to further abuse and manipulation by an abusive, wealthy partner who already has all of the power in their favor, and you're stacking it further against them. For what gain? In the hope that a few good men might willingly offer financial assistance, as if they aren't already. See, the premise is that these men who are already not wanting to go ahead and do this thing are the overwhelming majority of the reasons why women are not going ahead and being able to bring this child to term. And that's just not a premise that I can accept, because we're talking about women at all various stages of economic stability that are choosing not to carry a child to term. And it's not just because of finances, it's also because it's a risk to life.
Okay, the risk to life part, was it for the mother? Okay, okay. So, okay. let's see, just clearing the first fact, when you talk about how maybe rich men would actually come up and then tell them I'd be taking the responsibility. I think there will be definitely certain parameters when, because as I said, this would be if in case it's going to be a policy, there will be some parameters when the person will be judged. For example, if in case that you are actually wanting to adopt a baby, just the fact that you have enough money, you're not given to adopt a baby, right? You have to give, like, certain kind of references. You have to prove yourself to be a good parent first to do that. So if in case this is going to be implied as a policy, there'll definitely be some regulations which will look after the problems you're concerned with. And secondly, bodily autonomy, I think that's been throughout. But the only thing I think why I'm on the upper hand on this part is because your bodily autonomy is guided by the causes that I am mentioning. So the bodily autonomy women are experiencing, like for abortion, is because the causes I've been mentioning throughout the debate. So that's why that's the reason why I didn't see bodily autonomy is such a big part. And secondly, I think when um yeah, so I'll just wrap up the debate. I think I'll just go ahead and let you speak first, if in case you have something to say in the on this part.
Certainly. So again, yes, there's plenty of reasons why women's lives can be go ahead and put to risk by carrying a child to term. Everything from blighted ovums, choriocarcinoma, molar pregnancies, all of those things are reasons why a fertilized egg will not be brought to term, and all of those things actually pose a risk to the woman to be able to carry them. I can't quote to you the percentage of fertilized eggs that do not go ahead and make it to term, but we do. It happens often enough that we have a term for it. It's called a miscarriage. A miscarriage, by any other way of describing it, is essentially nature's abortion. So there's also a further risk that is not being taken into account with what you're talking about. You see, when you go ahead and put a legal requirement such as what you're talking about, you're also putting on legal risks. So, for example, if besides a woman being trapped in an abusive relationship, having to go ahead and be tied legally to the father, or what wouldn't be a father if she was able to she was able to have the abortion according to what her rights should allow. The other very primary issue is, what about if she happens to have a miscarriage? Now there's a legal hook to make her financially responsible to the legal contract that she entered into, that she entered into good faith because she simply had a miscarriage. Legally, that would be enforceable. And I'll go ahead and let you take it from here so that way I can grab the final word.
Okay, I didn't really grasp so much about that part because I think miscarriage would not be counted in this debate because it is, yeah, because there's nothing about vetoing on that part because miscarriage is natural. And then, yeah, so I'm sorry, but I didn't get so much hold of what you were saying. So just talking about the whole thing, I think men should be allowed to veto abortions if they are taking the full responsibility of the child, because I think we're giving three better lives, if in case we're implying this argument. And I think I don't see that from your side. I see that from your side it is somehow trying to benefit the women's lives, but still it is not, because there are a lot of risks of maternal health, and they're losing, so many women are forcibly losing the sense of motherhood they could experience. And then, as I said, I think we're enabling men to actually take responsibility of the child, and that has been the problem women have, like, so thoroughly, I think, like, argued against. And then I think that's how, like, that's what even feminism actually, like, gets to, if in case you see, on a general level. So I think from my side of the debate, all these three stakeholders are benefited. And for me, necessarily, the thing is that because women are wanting to abort, because the problems, actually, whatever problems are, those problems are actually going to be addressed because of this specific contract. And then that will give them a better health, because pregnancy is natural, and then they'll have a baby, they'll actually be able to continue the education too, they'll still experience a sense of motherhood. And on the other hand, the father or man is also doing.
So so basically, to go ahead and I guess to put my conclusion into play, all three parties are always benefited when laws are applied equally without any special groups going ahead and getting special privileges, because when equal protection of the law is ensured, all of society can thrive, and no legal rules can be used to then further oppress other groups, such as men, such as children, such as women, such as other ethnic groups. On top of that, there is no guarantee that providing men more of a right to women's bodies is somehow going to benefit women, because there are legal complications that can arise, such as a clever lawyer going ahead and tying a miscarriage to a legal obligation to fulfill that contract, especially when we already have legal laws in place to go ahead and adhere to that. And then finally, at the end of the day, it's a bodily autonomy is so fundamental that murderers and corpses have it. And any restriction on women's rights to their own bodies is simply unacceptable.